Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 3 4. Check 1 2 3 4. Take a listen there. Check 1 2 3.
Okay. Oh, you said 305
Check 1 2 3.
79207.
Check, check. Are you getting it?
Wait a moment.
Check 1 2.
Okay, we got
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
That's right. Yeah, if you get the high definition, and there's the high definition.
Whatever. At this point.
Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3 4. Check 1. Check 1 2 3. So how does your sound? Does it sound good?
And greetings. I would like to call to order the regular Village Council meeting of Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Thank you for attending. We would like to start with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, and I also want to announce that Sid Reese passed away on April 25th, 2021. He served the city on the Planning and Zoning Board for many years. As we go into a moment of silence, let's reflect on him, please. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the record reflects those who are present. I will now call the roll. Village Attorney Serafan.
Present.
Village Manager Benton.
Here.
Councilmember Birch. Present. Councilmember St. Fleur. Present. Councilmember Wagger.
Here.
Vice Mayor Marenberg.
Here.
Mayor Harris.
Here.
You have quorum.
Okay. Next item will be presentations, introduction and salutations from the office of Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniel Levine Cava. Sorry. Is there anyone here from the mayor's office? No? Okay. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the public comments.
Madam Mayor,
Madam
the village...
Mayor.
Sorry.
If I may, I was
Yeah.
hoping to maybe take one of our items out of order, if we could waive the rules on it, given that we do have one of our items is addressing public comment. Maybe before we actually start the public comment, we could discuss that item and how we'd like public comment to proceed during these council meetings going forwards.
Any discussion? Anyone on the council would like to discuss?
Oh, I thought we went to public comment. I'm so sorry.
We were at public comments.
Oh, you have approval of minutes. I mean, I don't mind if we can maybe move to approval of the minutes and then step back to the public comment item, if that would
Okay,
work.
that would be fine. Okay, we're moving on to approval of the minutes for April 20th, 2021 Village Council meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Vice Mayor?
So I think this is item, where are we? 10D. Discussion, public action regarding procedure and timing for public comments. I know that Ms. St. Fleur, Councilmember St. Fleur, had sponsored this, so maybe I will let her.
Well, was there agreement to move it? I didn't want to move it.
Discussion and possible action regarding procedure and timing for public comments. Thank you, Vice Mayor Marenberg, for co-sponsoring. This item is important to me because as we were all campaigning and as I was campaigning, I heard a lot of feedback from residents about their unhappiness or the unfairness of not being able to speak after each comment, after each issue is discussed. And I'd like for us to have a conversation as a governing board about how do we reinstate public comment after each agenda item, as opposed to having public comment 3 minutes at the beginning. I can tell you guys that my suggestion on the front end, I did some research at other cities and other counties and municipalities. I would highly recommend that we do 2 minutes after each discussion item. There's a resolution attached that you can look at, not necessarily 5 minutes, but we can do 2 minutes after each discussion item. And after 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, you guys can make a decision. We would go to 60 seconds to 1 minute for respecting time and to make sure that people get home at a fair time.
I can't even probably hear.
Madam Mayor? Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yes. When I was elected mayor in 2015, from 2015 to 2017, we had what we're referring to here is contemporaneous public comment. And in my experience is that, yes, it gave people more opportunity to speak at the time that the item was coming up. My experience with it was also that the people who were really interested and wanted to stay for the whole meeting found that they wanted to comment a lot. So in addition to what Councilwoman St. Fleur said, I think it is also a good idea to say that you get one bite at the apple. So for each particular agenda item, each person present gets one chance to speak in this 2 minutes after each agenda item comes up. This does not affect public comment on ordinances or first reading and at the mayor's discretion, second reading. But it does say that one person can't speak to an item more than once. And this would then include public commenting at the beginning. So if you were going to contemporaneously comment on an agenda item, then you would reserve your comment for that time when the item came up, presumably because you had devoted your time to be here for the entire meeting. So that's the amendment that I would like to add to this.
So I'm sorry.
Through the chair.
I brought this up so that we can have a conversation about it together, and I would like to ask staff, once we're done having a discussion, to come up with best practices, bring that back to us, and then we can make a decision. But I just wanted to make sure that we address that at our first meeting, because I know that that was something that was important to the residents.
Madam Mayor, may I speak?
Yes.
Councilwoman Birch, I'm unclear of what you're proposing as your amendment. Can you please restate your proposed amendment?
Yes, that for each agenda item that is not a comment on an ordinance that is first or second reading, that each speaker speaking to that agenda item would be able to come up to the microphone once.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yes, you may.
So I think that from my standpoint, the way that I was looking at public comment, I've seen it done in other jurisdictions, is that there's a small period of time that's given, a period of time that's given before the agenda items are actually addressed. If people want to raise comments in general about items that are not on the agenda, things that maybe they would like the council to know or think about for future meetings, and limit those comments only to items that are not on the agenda, and that moving forwards, when we get to agenda items, to then have people that are have relevant public comment to the specific agenda item go ahead and make those contemporaneous comments at that time.
Everybody, well, I feel I like the 2 minutes, that people could have the option of speaking either at the public comment in the front or at the time of the item, but not both, of course not, and that we not talk about items that's not on the agenda of the day. I would propose that.
Madam Mayor, just for clarity, so people will not be able to address any issues in their public comments if it's not on the agenda, if they're doing general comments, is that?
Right.
Okay. Well, I'd like to say typically in most places, you can speak about, just like Vice Mayor Marenberg said, you can speak about issues that are not on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting if you would like to. Mm-hmm. But after each item you don't speak to the items, sorry you guys, you don't speak to the items that we're about to speak about, like before the item comes up. Then you can speak to every item after. Public comment is then open after we have made a discussion so that we can get the public's input. But the general comments on the front end, you don't speak to the items for the sake of time and for the respecting everybody's time. You only address issues that are not on the agenda if you would like us to think about the issues coming up. So that, say for instance, someone wants to speak 2 minutes prior to the meeting starts in public comments, then you give whatever it is that you want to say. After we speak about each issue, then they have 2 minutes where they can address specifically the topic that we're discussing. And after 9 o'clock, you only have my suggestion is that after 9 o'clock, you only have 1 minute to discuss that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I understand that. But not everybody wants to stay and wait on the item. They want to speak up front and go home on an item. So I wanted to give an opportunity for both. You speak in the front or at the item. Yeah.
Thank you.
Attorney Serafin.
If I may, we need to be aware that we're required by law to let people speak at the hearing, preferably at the beginning, on matters that may not be on the agenda.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
And if I understand the conversation, do we have a consensus for staff to look into best practices and come back with a recommended resolution?
Yes, that's the
Got it.
motion. But yes.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, I would ask one more thing, and that's to verify whether submission of e-comments is in place of in-person. What I would not want to see is us getting bogged down with both e-comments and then the person that submitted e-comment having it read into the record, and then also taking time at the meeting in person. It should be one or the other. And to that effect, that means that the e-comments that are submitted need to be identifiable. We received a host of e-comments that are guessed. I don't know if the system allows for someone to verify whether the same person's even submitted multiple comments at the same time or not. But if there's a way to verify whether e-comment can be done verified or that it's not going to be accepted unless there's a name and address included, then I think that would be something useful to know.
Maybe even a hybrid. Maybe it's included in the e-comments that you all get in advance to read, but won't be read at the meeting if there's no name attached.
Yeah.
That serves your not getting bogged down interest.
And review the time for the end of comments if it's not governed by any law. I don't think that 30 minutes before the meeting, or whatever it currently is enough for us to review, because we're in transition and traveling. Yeah.
Got that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I apologize for taking that out of order. I wasn't sure whether we'd be in a position to make a motion that might affect public comment tonight, but it looks like we want to go back and get some more recommendations on possibly a resolution.
Okay. Madam Clerk, where are we at presentation, at public comments?
Correct. The village clerk's office has received approximately 81 e-comments. In the interest of time, if it's the pleasure of the council, would you like to forego reading 81 e-comments into the record and go straight to in-person public comments?
Yes.
Okay, so noted.
Okay, public comments, please state your name and address and limit it to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Good evening.
Hello. Thank
My name is Robert Menji. I live at 1102 Northeast 105 Street. And I've been a resident here for approximately 20 years. I've lived in Miami-Dade County all of my life. I've worked for the county government, and I'm very familiar with the processes that are going on, and I welcome you guys to our little piece of paradise.
Thank you.
I appreciate your assistance and your dedication to giving up your time to assist the residents. I already have 2 comments for 2 other items on the agenda. However, I am speaking about this particular point. I will not comment on the other ones because I submitted those by email, and I think it's appropriate that what you're saying does need to have a limit. However, putting an adjustment on public comment is a dangerous situation because things change all the time. We're constantly evolving and moving along. I think it's appropriate that you let the people speak at the beginning of the meeting and take it up and determine if one of the council members are willing to proceed and follow up to see if it's worthy of addressing. Other than that, I welcome you all. Thank you very much for your time. And I'm sorry if the meetings do run over after 9 o'clock, but you made the commitment. You guys are here. You're stuck with it.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor, while they adjust the microphone, just wanted to make clear for the record, those e-comments will be retained as part of the official record.
Yes.
The village council has received those e-comments as of this afternoon, so they have read it. Just wanted to make that clear.
Can I take the mask off?
Oh.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Grossman. My family and I have lived in Miami Shores for 8 years. And tonight I'm speaking on behalf of the Miami Shores Jewish community. On behalf of our community, we simply want to say thank you to all of the council members tonight, not only for what we understand is broad support for the Hanukkah menorah in the holiday display, but for all of the culturally celebratory community measures being considered tonight. We believe it's important that each member of the community can see themselves reflected in the community that they live and see and in the culture that we all celebrate together. Together, as a one full community, we look forward to celebrating with all of our neighbors during the holiday season, at cultural events, and learning about one another's heritage. So we understand, as I mentioned, that there's wide support for each and every one of these measures that's on the agenda tonight. So tonight, I simply want to say thank you for your support, and thank you for your dedication to our community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening,
I'm Dan
sir.
Kerr, live on Northeast 94th Street. It's a pleasure to be back at council meetings. I've stayed away for a little while. May the 4th be with you all. It's our holiday. As far as a public comment, I'll address that briefly. I think that hybrid model is probably the best. Never underestimate the value of your constituents' comments and however you receive them, whether email, at a council meeting. It takes a lot of bravery sometimes for people who haven't done this to come up. So meetings after 9 o'clock are usually the best. Meetings after midnight are even better. Budget meetings at 5 a.m. are my favorite. I came today just briefly to speak about item 9B, which is the appointment of the 2 council members to the Police Retirement Board. I've served on the Miami Police Retirement Board for 18 years, many years as the chairman. I've been a police officer for 22 years, and probably the most important thing to retain and attract qualified police officers is a very strong pension system. The 185 monies and the monies that are delivered throughout the village is probably integral to you keeping the good officers that you've trained and you want to keep for a long time. So in my understanding of the charter or the code, and maybe the clerk can correct me, but it's anyone can really be appointed, any village resident, whereas the agenda item here today says the appointment of 2 council members. While I'm not discounting the ability of a council member to serve on that board, it can be very conflicty to at one point be negotiating a contract and actually ultimately voting on that collective bargaining contract that could have pension modifications in it, and then serving on that pension board also. So what I would ask you to is to consider choosing qualified candidates for that position that are trained and educated. Is incredibly, incredibly important position that takes a lot of knowledge as far as the state statutes. 112, the 185 laws are very, very specific in regards to forfeitures, and sometimes it's a lot easier for you to sit as the council as a board that is opposite you, whereas when you sit on the same board yourself, it can kind of sometimes overlap. So I don't know if there's maybe been an adjustment to it where it mandates that a council member serves on that board, but I would have you consider, if you have that option, to pick a really qualified candidate from within this village. We have hundreds of really, really good residents out here that will probably be willing to contribute. Thank you very much for doing your job, this lucrative job you signed up for. I'll see you at midnight on budget night.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening. Christian Olbert, 29 Northeast, 102nd Street. First, congratulations to our new mayor, to our 2 new wonderful council members that joined the council. Very exciting to see our village really move forward. Come to talk very quickly on 3 items. Number 1, thank you to our former mayor, now Councilwoman Wagner, for your item to celebrate Pride Month. As someone who joined President Obama when he first declared Pride Month in the White House, it gives me great excitement and joy to see that our community finally is doing it. It's sad to say that as someone who campaigned in this council, we still have to send that message loud and clear, and it's a great day that hopefully this council moves forward on this. It's also sad that it took this long, so I applaud former Mayor Wagner and our councilwoman for doing this. 2, on allowing a menorah, I was very disheartened to hear the debate that took place at the last council meeting. I was actually in Tallahassee at the time during the session, and many members of the Florida legislature, including some Republicans, were truly dismayed that this council and received advice from the city attorney to not proceed, put, I think, the village in peril with some legislators. And I come at it from a very personal perspective because when I ran in 2019, it was former council member Lafredo who showed the kindness of his heart and the ethics and integrity he held, which really changed how I approached my campaign in the runoff with him, because we were sitting at Dunkin' Donuts, both waiting in line, and he told me that the city attorney had shared a legal opinion with him and had not shared it with me. I still have the email dated April 12th, 2019, where he sent me an email saying, I'm sharing the memo that I received yesterday from the city attorney, and it was disappointed you were not included. I think a recount is the appropriate way to handle the situation, but my wishes were ignored and you were left off the email. So I share that with legislators because I do question some of the legal advice you receive. I was on the losing end of some of that legal advice. So I urge you to, really listen to those who've done the research. And as someone who works with lots of city leaders, county leaders, state legislators, mayors, and folks across the country, really, I've seen menorahs lit up at different government buildings, from the White House down to the State House, down to a courthouse, down to City Hall. So I really urge you to really embrace that opportunity for this community. And lastly, just for our new members to the council and to our mayor, your service was really exuded during the campaign trail, so I really commend you for that. And what I'm most excited about is the opportunity to really move our community forward and embrace new opportunities for our village, because we all love Miami Shores. I chose to live here. I grew up in Miami-Dade County, but I chose to live here. We're remodeling our house, expanding our house. We call it our forever home, where we're going to raise our kids, and there's a reason for that. But that also should not be a reason to hold back the opportunities to have a vibrant downtown. We have amazing businesses in downtown who are eager and excited to partner with this council, and I'm hoping that you will do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Netkin, and I live at 1266 Northeast 94th Street. It's so nice to see all your faces here. Congratulations on those of you who are new to the council. I'm here to talk about the action item regarding the Hanukkah menorah. And I was at the last meeting, and I spoke about the importance of this and why it's important to our community. And truthfully, I just think it's important for all people to have the opportunity to have representation for their holidays, their beliefs, and in regard to this specifically, the Hanukkah menorah. I did a little research on this, and not only do all of the municipalities surrounding this area allow a Hanukkah menorah to be represented in front of their village halls, our town halls. The governor does in Tallahassee, the White House does, and it goes on and on. Additionally, the Supreme Court deemed that Hanukkah menorah is not only a religious symbol, but it's also a holiday symbol. So I think in this case, if the concern is that we don't want to have a religious symbol, the Hanukkah menorah is a holiday symbol. So therefore, just like a Christmas tree being a holiday symbol, we should be able to have a menorah stand in front of the village hall. And I hope that you'll all support that. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Brian Kronberg, 164 Northeast 105th Street. Hi, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members, congratulations. I'll keep my comments well under the 2 minutes. I just want to let you know I am in support of item 10A. I agree with, which is the placement of the menorah on city property, city hall property. I echo what the other speakers have said, and I thank you for taking the item up tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Denise Perry, living at 340 Northeast 94th Street. My comment today is regarding the Public Works Department. I discovered several weeks ago that they hire day workers, and in this particular instance, a day worker was hired to do some work over on the east side. The day worker wanted to get paid right away. And when they were told they would have to wait until the end of the day, they pulled the gun on the Public Works employee. My concern is the hiring of day workers to come in and supplement individuals that work in the Public Works Department. I know that there is a protocol or process for background checks. So when you hire individuals or day workers to come into the community where we pay a lot of taxes to supplement work that needs to be done in the shores, that's a concern for the safety of the residents as well as the safety of the public works workers. So I hope that you will take the opportunity to investigate, give that some further investigation to determine the process or protocol that they currently have for hiring day workers to fill in the gaps when they need to get things done here in the shores. Thank you and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Good evening, how you doing? Congratulations of the elected officer. I just want to come in to show and show my support, and I had on agenda A, 10A, and I want to support the menorah to be shown, and that's what I just come to show my support to.
Thank you.
Asher Sasunko, 10626 Northeast 11th Court. Firstly, I want to congratulate all the new council members, and we wish you well. It's not easy, and there's a lot of negativity in the world, as we all know, and it seems like the menorah issue is definitely unifying the village here, and it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for all of us to come together, and we definitely, myself, the Jewish community, the entire community of Miami Shores supports this very, very strongly, and we appreciate all that you will do and that you've done.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good evening. Dennis Leyva, 69 Northeast 102nd Street. I worked in government for 23 years, retired to Miami Shores. And first off, I would like to thank Councilwoman Birch for sending her email today asking for residents' comments. So I commented on quite a few of them. Thank you. You brought it to our attention, so you received my comments. I also would like to thank Councilwoman Wagarth and Flora and Merenberg for their agenda items, because basically you're nudging Miami Shores into the 21st century in 2021. So many of these items are past due. So past due, it's really kind of sad. The Hanukkah memorial, that's past due. The same-sex couple, are you kidding me? We're still working on that. My husband in the room, Clark Reynolds, we passed the gay rights ordinance in Miami Beach 1992, almost 30 years ago. We're talking about it today. So this agenda to me is like a memory piece of what should have happened 30 years ago, and it's past due. It's been passed due by the village manager. It's been passed due by all the prior elected officials who didn't do anything. They just came in and left. And it's kind of sad, but now we have you guys in office, and you obviously know what's past due, because this agenda reflects the work that has not been done in Miami Shores way too long. And I hope success to all of you.
Thank you.
Hi, Clark Reynolds, 69 Northeast 102nd Street, and there is one item that Dennis didn't talk about, and that was Haitian Heritage Month. I worked in North Miami for the last 15 years. I dealt with a lot of Haitian people there. This was that month, and Haitian Flag Day is a very, very, very big deal. We have a lot of Haitian people here, and they should be allowed to celebrate and have our support also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Al Crespo, resident of Miami Shores since 1993. So, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
There's a saying that goes, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Sometimes on a blue moon, that becomes a different thing, and you actually do see change. And hopefully, you all are going to be the ones who make the exception to the rule and make the changes that have long been overdue in this community. I'd like to point out the issue about the public speaking. I think the last thing you need to concern yourselves with when considering allowing individuals to speak is what time they need to get home. What's far more important is, one, individuals who come to public meetings often don't get the opportunity to know exactly what any of you are thinking about or want to do until they hear you. So if you ask somebody to speak before you speak, they can't make an informed decision or make informed comments because they don't know what's on your mind. And that's pretty critical when it comes to participation by citizens in their government. So I would urge you to really focus on that issue about the ability to allow people to speak, and not only once. You know, some people might make somebody up there unhappy because they speak more than once, but maybe those people actually have something to say and can contribute. And I think that's also important. So the other thing I'd like to speak about, and hopefully we can do this later, you have an item for discussion about the chief of police. Since I am in some ways partly responsible for that item being put on the agenda, I would ask when that item comes up for discussion that I have an opportunity to speak to you at that point after you all have spoken or answer questions or whatever. Because I have added some additional documents that everybody can see. All of you at home, all of you here, if you have a cell phone, if you type in www.crespogramnews.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, it opens up. You'll see a yellow button that says Miami Shores, and hit that button. You'll see a bunch of documents, and some of them need explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more public comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public comment section.
Madam Mayor, next item is 7A, an ordinance of the Village Council of Miami Shores Village, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Building and Buildings Regulations, Section 6-10, subsection C, to update the definition of substantial improvement, providing for conflicts, codification, severability, and an effective date. Staff on this item is the Planning and Zoning Director.
Okay. Mr. Kendall. Mr. Kendall, go ahead, sir.
Good evening. Yes, Travis Kendall, Planning and Zoning. I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening, and we'll be talking about a few things. But this one is an ordinance on first reading, and I'll spend a little bit of time just talking about substantial improvement, and for those people who don't know about it, and sort of get into how it might affect some people, and what the technical definition change or altering of that will, basically how it's going to affect them. So currently, those properties which are located in a hazard area are affected by the FEMA regulations for substantial improvement. And what that means is if you were to do an improvement of the value of the property of a house greater than 50% of the assessed value, it triggers all of the FEMA requirements for elevating the house and flood-proofing the house in the event of a hurricane up to the standards established by their code. And currently, the calculation for substantial improvement is done on an annual basis. So if January 1st you came in and got a permit, and you then, the totaling of that would be 12 months from the date of the time of the initial permit. As a result of that, the value of the property, just using a number, a $100,000 property could only improve $49,999 worth of improvements in a 12-month period. The result was a lot of the properties, because some of the valuations of properties has been shifting more from the structures and into the actual land values, and as a result, the property values, while still staying the same, have seen a shift to land value versus structure value, resulting in properties who were potentially going to be able to do significant improvements being unable to do that because of the triggering of the substantial improvement definition or the tolling of that. And as a result of that, weren't able to do the renovations. So the ordinance in front of you basically changes those rules or the definition of the duration or period of time which the calculation occurs from 12 months to permit. So if you were to come in and do a permit, you could phase the renovations of a structure and say if the roof was going to be, of the $49,000 that we were referring to before, $25,000, you could come in and get the permit and redo the roof. And then once that permit is closed, the next day you could come in and say, now I'm going to do the kitchen, the windows, the garage, and as a result of that, the tolling starts at zero again. So the calculation resets. So instead of being a 12-month period, the calculation period, because of the change in the ordinance that being proposed, goes from permit to permit, which as a result of that will significantly reduce the difficulties that some individuals are having on their household and make it a little bit easier to get a permit. So that's sort of a summary of that, and staff is making a recommendation of approval of the ordinance as written. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Anyone?
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall, for your report. In your staff report, I just have a quick question. It says recommendation of staff. It reads, updating the definition of substantial improvement, the Village Code Chapter 6-10 sub C will help allow for reasonable renovations of a residential property without undue hardship. What is the definition of reasonable? And who decides that?
Again, the definition of reasonable in that sense would be if you were to come in and redo a permit currently, the reasonableness is less than 49%, because regardless of what happens, the calculation total has to be less than that or it's going to trigger the substantial improvement. So in this case, the definition that you're referring to would be 49% of the value is the reasonable, whatever that may be, whatever section of the improvement that you want to do would be that.
That makes sense to me. And the purpose of this is renovations without undue hardships to our residents as we move forward, right?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I have a number of questions. How are we currently calculating the fair market value of structures?
Well, it's done through the building department, but in essence, there's a calculation which is done based upon the value of the improvement. So if the building official be more, makes that determination currently. So I know that it's a FEMA calculator system that's applied to the contracts and the valuation. As the floodplain administrator, I actually authorize or approve the appraisals as they come in to establish the set value, but he actually looks at the contracts and all of the datum that comes in associated with that and makes his own determination based upon the FEMA.
But putting aside the actual permits for the improvements, you're basing this off of 50% of FMV of the structure when you're pulling the permit.
Yes.
And so there's got to be a calculation of what FMV is. And I know different jurisdictions have different methods they've used to calculate what the fair market value is. Naples, for instance, takes 20% over the property appraiser site. Other jurisdictions, if you want to question it, will take appraisals from third parties to actually demonstrate what that is. I think I'm struggling a little bit about whether we would, first of all, want to have a workaround when this is meant to provide for better flood protection for people, given this is a FEMA program. And nor would I want us to somehow run afoul of FEMA's regulations, because it seems like this is a cute workaround, to just say it's based on one permit. And I don't know how many permits anybody's going to pull that are going to be 50% or more of the value of the structure necessarily. The language in the FEMA regulations that I saw relating to the 50% rule talk about a combination of work that's done, and most jurisdictions have a time period in which they look at it. And so I believe Miami Beach may be a 1-year look back, and they think that's appropriate. I think Collier County has a 5-year look at the total number of projects. I don't know that I've seen a permit-to-permit type of analysis in just one permit. And I would hate to risk us falling out of good stead with FEMA as a compliant community with the regulations because we are just trying to allow for a permit-to-permit. Now, work that's done that does not have a permit pulled doesn't count towards that. If we were to have certain things that we thought do not require a permit, or if we were to adjust whatever our minimum project dollar value is for permits to be pulled, that is something that could be helpful on smaller projects. But at the end of the day, the smaller projects are not likely to hit that 50% threshold. We're talking about if you're getting near that 50% threshold on the fair market value of the structure, it's probably a pretty significant project. And we really should be considering whether we need to bring this up to standards for FEMA. So, you know, certain things are obviously excluded in this. Soft costs are excluded. It only applies to structures where the lowest floor is below the base flood elevation. So anybody pulling permits and the lowest floor is not below base flood elevation doesn't have this problem. You're not including your architectural, your soft costs. So, you know, is there any other jurisdiction that actually does this on a permit-by-permit basis as compared to looking at it as a combination of projects over a set period of time that might be defensible to FEMA?
Well, the regulation as proposed is consistent with the regulations established by FEMA. So that's not really the determination of the value and the tolling of the time isn't established. In other words, we can do it for permit to permit. We can do it at 12 months. As you said, there's variations. We can do a 1-year. We can do a 5-year. Quite frankly, if the council so wills not to change it, then that's totally fine too. We already have a regulation that says 12 months. So again, if the feeling amongst the seated council members is not to change it, then, you know, staff's willing, doesn't have any issue keeping it the way that it is. So, you know, again, and going back to just as a quick question, there's, I don't want to say none, but any house that's pulling a permit in the flood zone does not meet the current flood zone requirement for elevations and heights. So based upon that statement, every house that's pulling a permit is going to be affected by these regulations if they trigger the substantial improvement. So that's just
at current times. So what is our current threshold for dollar value projects that require a permit?
Every again, and this, I'm not speaking for the building official, but anything over $100 requires a permit in the village currently. But again, for the purpose of FEMA's calculation, they look at the value of work done. Regardless of the cost of the permit, it's actually based upon the value of the improvement. But again, there's a significant difference between $100 and I'm renovating to 49% of the value of a structure. So, but it's just really a question of how do we toll or how do we count that so that when we're audited by FEMA, we have the capacity to provide the information to obviously not affect our CRS rating or anything along those lines.
So you're comfortable that if somebody pulled a permit for roofing that is, call it 40% of the value of the structure, especially if it's a dilapidated structure, and then within 3 months, and they've done the roof permit, they've closed it out, and then 3 months later they pull, a permit for an addition, let's say that's going to be another 30% of the structure, that's not going to trigger any issues with FEMA?
No, I don't believe that to be true.
Mayor Harris?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
I just want to ask Mr. Kendall a couple of pointed questions. We have heard a lot about people, quote, running up against the 50% rule because every house in a flood zone has to deal with this issue. So could you possibly give us a number of homes that have had that involvement with their permit?
I believe, in my experience, probably in the last 12 months, that there's been substantial improvements. On the last, well, let's back up. Okay. The CRS review annually, for part of that, requires providing that information as part of the record. There was 3 that were done last year that qualified as substantial improvements. Those are the ones that actually participated in the program and qualified for substantial improvement and then improved the structure to meet all of the requirements. There's probably been 15 or 20 that have proposed things but once they had the discussion that they were going to exceed that, then chose not to improve the property because they knew that they would have had significantly higher costs to meet the requirements within the flood zone. So there's probably only been 15 or 20, which is a significant number.
And as regards appraisals, we do authorize third parties to do these appraisals, and we frequently have or are using an appraisal done by a third party. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, every application comes with a third-party appraisal. In other words, the people, we don't internally do appraisals of structures or values. That's a requirement. If someone's doing the improvement and they submit it, and we, as part of the application, they provide to us a third-party appraisal that's certified by a Florida appraiser. So yes, we don't internally do them.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that was it.
All right. And to the Vice Mayor's point about other cities possibly using the property appraiser's value, does the property appraiser appraise only the structure?
Yes. But again, the property appraiser in and of itself, it's not a completely accurate determination. So, I mean, that still is not, if you were to look at any property, almost any property, on the property appraiser's webpage, you would find that the valuation of the structure is significantly less than if you were to get a private appraisal for the same thing. There's consistencies where they're only appraising at approximately 75 to 80% on average of the structural value of the property. So again, a lot of times people would come in and say, here's the property appraiser's webpage, and we'd say, well, then you can only do X amount of work. If you give us a private appraisal, you may be able to do more based upon the appraisal that's submitted. And they do then go ahead and submit those appraisals to try and raise the level or the dollar amount which can be used for the improvement.
Okay, and again, it would be reasonable to say there were less than 20 homes that went through that process in the past year or so.
There was probably 15 or 20 homes who would have been significantly affected who chose not to. There still have been some teardowns who have done the significant improvements, as part of their construction project, yes. New construction basically is going to meet those requirements.
Okay, thank you.
This is more specifically to homes who are trying to renovate and are running up against it without doing a complete demolition of the home. Because really the problem that you have in dealing with this is base flood elevation. So if you're in a flood zone and your house is 2 feet above or 5 feet above the flood zone, new construction says you're in an AE7 and we have a 2-foot freeboard requirement. Now you're looking at 9 feet above the crown, so they'd actually have to raise the houses 3, 4, 5 feet in some instances, and that's the problem.
And in a related question, as the Vice Mayor said, with the change in the FEMA flood maps, I know we had about over 850 homes that were within the flood zone in the 2009 maps. Now we have the new ones. Do we possibly know how many total?
I do. I have very specific numbers. Originally, and not to discount that, but the original number is actually 601, to be specific. The firm maps, which I actually have over against the wall, which everybody can look at. The second one in is sort of shaded a purple color, and we'll probably have discussions about this later. But very briefly, 601, the proposed FEMA firm flood map updates, which we're going to be obviously discussing later, I believe, I'll have to check on the map, but I think it's 385. So the current is 385, but there's also a section of 85 houses which were affected previously, which actually are going to come out of the flood zone based upon the new map. So there's a few coming out. But there's approximately 300 going in a different location. So again, updated data, new data. It's just, again, we'll talk about that in depth, I think, a little bit later. So.
Okay. I'm sorry. Well, I'm kind of concerned with anything that's going backwards with our efforts of resiliency and climatizing our homes in our city. However, given that the only mitigation that FEMA gives is for people to raise their homes, it seemed a little bit unreasonable. And with the new maps, there would be more homes impacted. But I am concerned with, does this create more permits per project, or these are projects that would have had this many permits anyway?
No, you are absolutely correct. In theory, it is going to create more permits as part of the process by which, in other words, before they could pull a master permit
Okay.
and then do all of them under one master. And they still can. It's just if they choose to proceed under that path, they can certainly still do that. They would just, in theory, trigger substantial improvement and then be required to mitigate to the standards established by FEMA. So they could still do it under one permit and avoid all the permits and do it in a timely manner. It's just the level that they're affected ultimately. So it's a decision that the homeowner would make.
My concern is because one thing I've heard from the residents is the permitting process is backed up, it's so time consuming. So how are you proposing to handle these additional permits?
Well, again, hopefully the permitting process gets expedited and the review process can sort of move along. But unfortunately, they have to function. You can't have one without the other. So we could certainly, unfortunately, we could keep it the way that it is, as I stated before. This is simply just an option that is being presented for your consideration that may provide an avenue for relief for some homeowners. But again, there are negative sides to potentially anything that you do and positive sides. So, we're talking about it openly and honestly, and yes, it's going to create more permits. So that's just the reality of giving the homeowner the capacity to do that versus not renovating their home, ultimately.
And the mitigation always involve raising the house?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, that's correct.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Madam Mayor, thank you for your presentation. I have come across quite a few residents who have run into this problem, and I took a fair bit of time researching this, having had those conversations, as you know, Mr. Kendall. So, and I know this does not run afoul of FEMA. So, and you're within the confines of that. Is the building director in the building? Is he with us this evening to address any of these issues? Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no further questions, Madam Mayor. I'd wish to move the item.
Okay. Any seconds?
I'd like to second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just to clarify, this does come up on a second reading as well, right? So we can
Yes.
review some more, and I'd ask
Yes.
Village Attorney, Mr. Seraphin, to just, if you would, just to put my mind at ease and double-check the combination of projects language, because I thought I saw that somewhere, but...
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Item 8A, a resolution of the Village Council of Miami Shores Village, Florida, authorizing the current mayor to be substituted for the prior mayor as signatory for applicable village bank accounts and providing for an effective date. This item is brought forth by the finance director through the village manager.
Any discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Go
Madam Mayor, if I may. So with the changing of the guard, so to speak, so comes the signature change on our check signing machine. This is sort of a housekeeping rule, or a housekeeping item, rather. So Ms. Wagger's name will come off and your name will go back on so that we can do our normal banking business. It takes 2 signatures to sign off on a check, so you would be added and Ms. Wagger's would come off.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Mayor?
Get a motion?
If I just wanted to ask the question, who are currently all the authorized signatories? Just 2. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 9A, appointment to 1 council member to the General Employee Pension Board. 1 council member has been historically appointed as ex officio member of the General Employee Pension Board. Councilman Lafredo was the former member to such board. Madam Mayor, if someone would like to nominate or request to serve on such board.
Are there any nominations or requests?
I would like to nominate Mayor Harris to the Pension Board.
I decline.
Did you decline?
I don't know if
Sorry,
that's
I didn't hear.
parliamentary
Sorry.
rule.
Did you say you declined?
You declined.
She said you decline?
She said
Okay, I would do general. I'll volunteer for general.
Okay. Councilperson Birch has volunteered for the board.
Yes, please.
I'll move for Councilperson Birch.
Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item is 9B, appointment of 2 council members to the Police Retirement Pension Board.
So, Madam Mayor, I do have a question on these appointments. I did take a look as well at the language, and I thought that it's not obligatory that council members actually be appointed to these, but I just wanted to verify if that's accurate.
Under Code Section 18-78, subsection A, it says 2 members who may be council members in an ex officio capacity. It's pretty much, as long as I can remember, that's how it's been done.
Okay, that was my recollections. There's some room for potentially non-council members to be there. And I know we just had a public comment on that. I know that there's probably several people that are very qualified in the police industry. So I don't know if we have any volunteers on the council to actually participate on this, on the Retirement Pension Board for the police, or if we'd like to consider non-council members to participate.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a concern about, even if they're ex officio members being appointed to this board, just for purposes of knowing and understanding what we're going to be voting on going forward as it relates to the Police Retirement Pension Board. So I would be in favor of Vice Mayor Merenberg's proposal that we may go out and seek qualified members of our community to serve this board.
I would be supportive of it too, without the requirement for them to be police officers. Not excluded, they could be police officers, but not a mandatory requirement, just knowledgeable on pension boards.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I
go ahead.
have been sitting on the Police Retirement Pension Board for the last 2 years, so I would like to point out that there are already our police officers who have seats on the board. Mr. Seraphin, is that correct? There are 2.
That's my understanding. The way it works, if I read the ordinance correctly, is the council appoints 2, there's another 2 that come from the ranks, and then I think those 4 select a 5th.
And for clarification, I was referring to any non-council person. Doesn't have to be a police officer.
Correct. I would like to give a little pro to having a council member serve on the Police Retirement Pension Board. Should we have someone who feels that they might be qualified? It is an advantage if you wish to recuse yourself from the vote when you're voting on these items, which does not come up very often. That's fine. But it is an advantage to be able to explain to your fellow council members what your experience has been and how you have come to an understanding of the issue. That is an advantage.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
With all due respect, Councilwoman Birch, you said you were sitting on that board for the last 2 years? Yes. I've just never had a report, or I've never had an understanding of how that board works coming from your experience sitting there. I just wonder if also it presents a conflict. That's not a moving argument for me. Thank you.
Okay, where does that put us? Are there any nominations or interests?
Madam Mayor, if I could get a vote on that particular appointment, especially
Haven't,
since it's provided for by Florida statute.
Okay. A vote for
A vote
outsiders?
just to instead of breaking away from tradition, essentially, recommending opening the appointments to residents, to village residents.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
do we have a
move that we
motion?
seek out some potential village residents to serve in the capacity on the Police Retirement Pension Board. And at the next council meeting, that we either have selected 2 individuals or 1 individual and a council member at that point. But that would be my motion, is to seek potentially 2 parties to sit on that board.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just for clarification, Mayor, so we typically, when we open up the application process for a month to allow the public to just get better informed, better acquainted, ask previous board members about their experience, and then typically it'll come back in a month if that's all right with the council. You'll be considering Doctors Charter School, Library Board next month, so I can add that to the repertoire of board appointments if it's the pleasure.
Yeah, Madam Clerk, I think my only question about that is, are we not in the middle of negotiations with the police at this point?
That's a question for the manager.
The pension board meets quarterly, and they do not participate in the negotiations.
Perfect. Then, as motion as amended for 1 month to seek out the two.
Okay, so then your current board member, which is Councilwoman Birch, and former Councilman Meltz, who's still a resident, will continue to serve until two new members are reappointed, just for clarification. There's no conflict with that, Mr. Attorney, correct?
If they include that in the motion, I'm happy.
Okay.
I mean, technically, it's a 2-year term.
It's a 2-year term. You serve until...
But if they're not appointing a replacement, and essentially what they're doing is they're extending the term for the existing. Who's the other one? Who's the other?
Former Councilman Meltz.
Meltz. All right, so you're going to have that vacancy anyway, but when's the next quarterly meeting?
Right, but
So
just
it's-
in case if there's a special meeting or anything
Yeah,
like that.
seems like it's no harm, no foul.
Okay.
I can't be on police and general at the same time.
Even in ex officio capacity, Mr. Attorney?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
I can't be on police and general at the same time.
I don't know. Let me check. Are you currently on the general?
No.
I see.
As of today.
So we're moving,
So she volunteered to serve on the general employee in an ex officio capacity, and then she's currently serving on the Police Retirement Pension Board. Since no one's been reappointed and we're opening up the application process, technically she serves until someone is reappointed or appointed.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would volunteer to serve on the pension board until we find 2 qualified officials as to
Okay.
avoid this little situation.
Try that again. I'll move for Councilperson St. Fleur to go ahead and take the place of Councilperson Birch until such time as we are able to locate through the 1-month process potential applicants to take those 2 positions.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So noted. Next item is appointment of a council representative and an alternate representative to the Miami-Dade League of Cities.
I volunteer.
I'll move for Mayor Harris to go ahead and take that appointment.
We get an alternate.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And an
I'd like-
alternate as well?
Mhm.
I would, me? Am I volunteering?
Don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'll volunteer as an alternate. That's no problem if you so wish.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question.
Councilwoman.
Can we discuss appointment of council representation and alternate representation to the Miami-Dade League of Cities? I've been to a number of these meetings in the past. I guess so my question would be, is this because we've always done it this way, that there's only one representative and one alternate? Because there's a lot that you can learn from other city officials and municipal officials throughout the state and throughout the county. Especially, I think that we would all have an opportunity to learn a lot from our peers, especially since we can't discuss things with each other,
You want
and to
to
build
handle it?
relationships with others so that we can learn.
I don't know. I'm assuming that it's the rules of the league that specify how many representatives each municipality would get. However, the meetings are open.
Okay.
I've attended them, so they've got to be open if they let me in. So, and you're right, I do learn a lot when I go. But we can check.
No, I believe that all of you can go, and we would just do a budget amendment. Right now, in our current budget, we're budgeted for 1 person to go. So it's a matter of doing a budget amendment that however many people go on a particular meeting. The league bills us for that meeting, and I'm not sure how much it costs these days, but, certainly all of you can go. Just you have to observe the sunshine when you're sitting around talking, but other than that, if you all wanted to go, as
I would
far
be
as I know, you
supportive of
can.
that.
This is about, I think, voting representation.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you, I'm sorry, I just wanted.
No, it's a good
No,
question.
that's a good question. I would be. Okay.
So we left off with the alternate, and we still need a motion, Madam Mayor, to solidify Vice Mayor Marenberg's appointment as an alternate to the Miami-Dade.
Did we get a motion in a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then the appointment of a council representative to the Florida League of Cities. But, I guess at this point, just so you know, the budget, the funds that are allocated in the budget is essentially allocated for the purpose of attending the conference, not so much monthly or biweekly meetings, just so that's clear.
I'd like to move, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to move for Councilwoman St. Fleur to be our appointment to the representative of the Florida League of Cities.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then appointment of a council representative to the Green Corridor District Board of Directors.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like to move that Councilwoman Alice Birch be appointed to the Green Corridor District Board of Directors.
Thank you. I like that idea.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 She's good, but she's not great.
Item 10A, discussion and possible action regarding placement of Hanukkah menorah at Village Hall. This item is sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Wagger.
Councilman, yes.
Thank you. I don't really intend to rehash the arguments that I made in favor of this menorah and this offering to our community because I think it is the right thing to do. I'm happy to get into the legal argument if I have to, but I would humbly ask my colleagues to consider this, since you all weren't with us the last time, the majority of you. I would just like to move this item by consent, if we have a motion.
We have a motion? You're making a motion? Second?
I'd like to move this motion forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 10B, discussion and possible action regarding the celebration of June 2021 Pride Month. This item is sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Wagger.
Madam Mayor?
Any discussions? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Present your item.
I bring this to attention to my colleagues because I find that throughout our beautiful county, there have been numerous Pride celebrations over the years. We here in Miami Shores enjoy a vibrant community filled with all different types of people. And I feel like we are one of the most diverse municipalities in the county. In fact, I know we're one of the most diverse communities in Miami-Dade County. In addition to that, we have a pretty significant LGBTQ community who have come to our beautiful village and have aided us all and worked with us all and beautified their homes and done all the things that all of us want to do for their quality of life. And I think that in celebration of that and in recognition of that and in recognition of all the people that make Miami Shores Village what it is, we should consider honoring that community and educating our community as a whole for June Pride Month. And what am I envisioning? I'm asking the manager, we have, I believe it's 22 flags that line Northeast 2nd. And I would like to see, as part of the celebration, us to either call Sunny Isles, call Miami Beach, call Coral Gables, call Bal Harbor, one of those municipalities, to get an estimate on how much it would be for us to purchase those flags and line Northeast 2nd with the pride flag. And I know there are two types of flags. We can have that discussion later, but I'd like that to be a portion of the celebration. And if you could get back to us with that. And if it is cost prohibitive to the village, I will write the check. So please
I second that
look
check.
into those flags and get back to us at our next regular meeting so that we can have that and so people can come out and actually see that we are supportive of all the members of our community. I think that we should plan an event, which we can talk about later. We have two parks that sit at Northeast 2nd and Northeast 94th that are rarely used. We have this facility here. I think we need to find a way, work with our social media, our Park and Recreation Department, and find a way, and my colleagues, and find a way to celebrate Pride Month in June with a day full of activities for everybody in this community. And I'm sure my colleagues will be happy to help the village plan such an event. So what I'm asking is, I suppose, do we have an agreement amongst my colleagues that we should be celebrating June as Pride Month in conjunction with Miami-Dade County as a whole and the myriad of other municipalities who do so? If there's any discussion, I'd love to hear it, but I'd also like to pass this by consent as well.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead. I couldn't hear you. Yes, Councilman.
I did, sorry. I'd like to take this.
Couldn't hear with these things.
Oh, sorry. I'd like to take this moment to say thank you to Councilwoman Crystal Wagger for bringing this to the council. I think this is long past overdue. I look forward to hopefully celebrating Pride Month. I'm not sure. I don't see a co-sponsor here, but I'd like to go on the record as co-sponsoring this. And you have my full support. And I think that just to wrap this up, love is love.
Yeah, that's cute.
Madam Mayor.
I would like to first say that I'm very supportive of this, 100%. It's long overdue. I have a gay son, so I'm very supportive. I am concerned with not a flag or cost of a flag or anything like that, but making sure that I'm not sure of the fiscal impact of this and having something budget for it, but I'm definitely in favor of the ordinance and will be voting for it.
Madam Mayor, may I? That is why I asked. I understand what you're saying, and that makes sense. I don't want to spend taxpayers' money. I would like the manager to come back with a cost on those flags, and then we can have that discussion. Thank you.
Yes. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councilwoman Wagger for sponsoring this item and Councilwoman St. Fleur for co-sponsoring the item now. As I guess the second maybe ever openly LGBTQ person on this council, I think it's a great move forwards. I think that it is an important thing to demonstrate that our village respects all human rights. It's not just about necessarily the LGBTQ community, but a demonstration that human rights in general are respected in our community. And so I thank you very much for making the motion here, the proposal.
Any further discussions? Do we have a motion? Crystal?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to
I'll
word the
make
motion.
the motion.
The motion is to
Direct staff to research associated costs with Pride Day flags and for such costs to be brought forth for council consideration.
I'll move it.
I'll move that as you said.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
I said Pride Day, June.
Pride Month.
Oh.
No, that's not the ordinance.
That's not the Well, that is a good point.
The motion
Holding Pride Month in June 2021.
The motion in progress was to direct staff to research costs associated with Pride Month flags and for such costs to be brought forth for council consideration. That was
that's-
the direction of,
Well, we want to move the order.
Maybe I can
Right,
help.
right, but we,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Is it correct that there's a consensus on the council to have the June of this year be Pride Month in Miami Shores?
Thank you, sir.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
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 Okay, but the other thing was that you mentioned events. So in a park,
Talk to the mic, please. We can't hear you.
did you mention events in a couple of parks nearby?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Councilman Birch, yes, and I presume that that would be a part of recognizing June as Pride Month, and we'll work with the village to come up with some sort of activity and/or events in the month of June in celebration of Pride Month. What I'm trying to accomplish here is that the village of Miami Shores will celebrate Pride Month in the month of June. That we concur that will occur.
So can we just modify the motion for clarity? I think just so we have directive on it, right? Let's modify the motion to declare June Pride Month in Miami Shores, and that the council is suggesting there be a celebration of that. Staff is to investigate the cost of obtaining flags and perhaps work with the Recreation Advisory Board to see if there's any kind of recreational activities they can put on to help celebrate and figure out ways to go ahead and celebrate.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Merrimer. Do I have?
I second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 10E, discussion and possible action regarding revisions to ordinances to include protections for sexual orientation and gender identity.
I'm
This
sorry.
item is sponsored.
What item?
We skipped
We
10C.
skipped, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just went into public comments and I saw that. 10C, discussion and possible action regarding celebration of May 2021 Haitian Heritage Month. This item is sponsored by Vice Mayor Daniel Marenberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think that we need to spend a lot of time on necessarily discussing the same item that we've just discussed. It's in the same vein. It's in the same light. Obviously, May is Haitian Heritage Month. We have a incredible and wonderful Haitian population here in the shores, and we should be celebrating May as Haitian Heritage Month. Other jurisdictions have already proclaimed it such and are celebrating. I would also note, as has been pointed on public comment, it's also API, Asian Pacific Islander Month. And so, I would like to make sure that the Shores is recognizing both the Haitian heritage and those that are Asian Pacific Islanders in origin for the month of May, and to, in a similar vein to the motion that we just had for June with Pride, to go ahead and examine how we can go ahead and display our support for our Haitian community and the Asian Pacific Islander community.
Any more discussions?
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
I
Councilman.
think it's only right, as the first Haitian American elected official in Miami Shores, that I thank you, Vice Mayor, for bringing this up. We do have a community that is rich in culture, and I appreciate you bringing this so that we can celebrate my mother and my family's heritage in the village of Miami Shores. I look forward to coming up with hopefully something that doesn't have a fiscal impact, because we don't have time for that, but something where we can recognize the community and we can say, we see you, we appreciate you, and we love you. And I would like to thank the audience members for their support of both Pride and Haitian Heritage Month. I have to say that I sat down and I looked up and it warmed my heart. So thank you. And I would also like to go on the record as co-sponsoring this.
So noted.
Madam Mayor, may I move this item?
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Item 10E, discussion and possible action regarding revisions to ordinances to include protections for sexual orientation and gender identity. This item is sponsored by Vice Mayor Daniel Marenberg.
Madam Mayor?
I'm trying to catch up. Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I know that I've mentioned this and some people may have already heard, but the Human Rights Campaign does issue a scorecard for municipalities the Municipal Equality Scorecard, Municipal Equality Index scorecard that's issued. Miami Shores has scored an 82 out of 100 in the last ranking, and that is because Human Rights Campaign has determined that we do not necessarily have the level of protections for sexual orientation, gender identity built into our own ordinances as they would hope to see as far as wording goes. This is obviously, again, just in the vein of human rights. I would think should be relatively non-controversial. There are plenty of jurisdictions that have already crafted exceptional language. I provided, I think, a link in the memo to language. I believe Pinecrest was the one that was looked at, and I'd like to, with the approval of the council, depending on how we vote, I would seek to have a motion to have the village attorney look into preparing an ordinance to protect sexual orientation and gender identity in Miami Shores.
Did you make a motion?
No, I'm just comment first, I guess.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that. I'll move the item.
Okay. Any seconds? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mayor, can I just make a comment? I did speak to Joe Corradino. He's the mayor of Pinecrest, because I wanted to ask him, how did this work out for your municipality? You passed this in 2019. What, if any, were the ramifications? And they had not had any events that were part of the ordinance. In other words, the process had not been used since that time. But I did ask him about a section that you might have read and might have been interested in, and that is the part about the special master. Who does that section, that segment? Because in Miami Shores, we don't hire a special master because we have a volunteer code enforcement board. So I'm sure that our attorney will research that and bring it back, but I did want to mention.
Thank you.
Item 10F, discussion and possible action regarding charter revision process and procedures. This item is sponsored by Councilmember Christowager.
Madam Mayor? This is more of a question for the attorney. What I'm looking to do here is figure out what the procedure is if we were to seek to amend our charter. Our charter, in my understanding, has not been amended since 1998. And in best practices across municipalities, usually a municipality does a charter review every 10 years to stay current and to make sure that everything that is in that charter is commensurate with the times. So I'm wondering what the process is to, one, review the charter, two, how long that review must take, and then I believe the recommendations then come back to the council. The council votes on those recommendations, and then it goes to a special election. I'm just looking for some guidance. Attorney Serafin, if you would.
As I recollect, there's two different things. One is, how do you amend the charter, which I haven't looked at because I didn't realize that was what you were focusing on. The other is the Charter Review Committee. And the Charter Review Committee is in the ordinances, and I think it's a 5-person committee that's appointed by the council. They are appointed, they are given a very short deadline, and I do have notes on that somewhere. Oh, here it is.
30 days.
They're given 30 days after their appointment to come up with written recommendations. Those recommendations come before the council at your next meeting thereafter for approval, rejection, or modification. And whatever comes out, if any proposed charter amendments that come out of that process, then have to go to a referendum election within 60 to 120 days thereafter. Pretty short time frame. And of course, for example, if we appointed them today, 30 days from now, they'd have to turn in a report. You'd have to hear it at the next council meeting, and then there'd have to be an election within 60 to 120 days after that, which means, if I'm counting correctly, special election, not inexpensive. So this might be something you want to time if you want to go the route of the charter review. If it's just you have some ideas that might make good charter amendments, I could take a look at that. The charter provides how it's to be amended. I just didn't have a chance to look at that. I could do it if you want to pass to another item and answer you tonight, or I can give you a call, or however you'd like to do it.
Thank you. I guess I want to be prudent in how we go forward with this. And I don't want to rush it. I want to do it right. So if we're looking at a review, I'm clear on how that works. I would ask that you would come back and address us all as to the charter amendment process so that we can make a decision as a body as to, one, whether or not we want to do either, and two, if we decide between the two how we want to move forward. I just want to make sure that our charter needs to be addressed because it has not been addressed in so long. So I think in the interest of moving our village forward, we do need to take a look at that. And I would like I would like the council to be advised as to the best. I would like the council to be counseled on the various ways in which to amend and/or review the charter.
I have another suggestion.
Tell me.
The provisions that I just outlined, 30 days after appointment, bring it before the next council meeting, have an election with 60 to 120 days. Those provisions are all in the code, not in the charter, which means y'all can change it if you like.
Done deal.
That's a twist.
How's that for council?
Can you provide us with a memo and the code language so that we can review that?
Sure.
Well,
it would be changed just by ordinance like anything else.
I understand that, but I think before we can opine on that, we need to see the language.
Well, you have to decide what
Hold
you'd
on,
like to
hold
change
on.
it to.
What I'm saying is, I would love for my colleagues to be able to review this, and then we can come back and discuss it. I'm one person, I don't want to make the decision for the body, but I think if everybody is aware of what their options are moving forward as it relates to the charter, then we can have an intelligent and informed discussion here at the dais.
So what I'm hearing is you'd like an option memo.
Yes.
Got it.
With backup documentation so that we are all privy to that information.
And would you include, like, what type of things can be accomplished through amendments versus a charter review? Because there may be some rules that some things can't be changed through an amendment.
You mean things in the charter that cannot be changed?
Yeah, the charter I'm referring to.
I'll
Yes.
look into that.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Harris, just a question for Crystal. Your expected outcome in a charter review would be a fresh charter that would cover, so many of the things in the charter have been deleted because of other laws, and I'm not an attorney, but you know what I mean. So what's your expectation from the charter review?
What's my expectation from the charter review?
Yes.
My expectation from the charter review is that we take a look at what's there and make sure that it is commensurate with the wants, the needs, and needs of this village to make it run smoothly, efficiently, and to speak amongst ourselves to see what's in the best interest of the village. I think that, I said again, I don't know if you heard me the first time, our charter has not been amended since 1998. It is 2021. So I'd like to take a look at it. I'd like all of my colleagues to take a look at it. And I'd like to know what our options are. I'd like those options to be available to us and presented to us at our next village council meeting so that we are not wasting time. But I'd like to see if there are things that need to be updated, changed, or amended because it's 2021.
Do we need to make a motion on that, or just instruct staff?
Madam Mayor, my understanding is that the council would like me to prepare an option memo as
Yes.
discussed. I don't think you need
This
a
is
motion on
instruction.
that.
That's what I thought.
I heard you.
Thank you. Okay, because I'm interested in that also. Thank
I
you.
get it.
All right.
I figure if there's anyone on the council who disagrees with something that the village attorney is requested to do, they'll speak up.
That's correct. Okay.
Madam Mayor? That's me. It's me, this way.
I could never hear you
It's
over
okay.
there.
Thank you for saying that. Attorney Serafin, just because this is an issue that has come up a lot when I was meeting with residents, if possible, could we get that sooner than later so that we can have time to take a look at it and kind of start thinking about what our options are?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 10G, discussion and possible action regarding FEMA proposed changes to flood insurance rate maps. This item is sponsored by Vice Mayor Daniel Marenberg.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I've sponsored and I have no idea what the heck it is. So, yeah, the flood insurance is ridiculously complicated if you haven't really drilled down into it and looked at it. The regulations are dizzying at best. We have some proposed changes to our flood insurance rate maps, the firms. I believe that our village manager received a letter to that effect in February 22nd or February 25th. Is that correct? And there's a 90-day period to appeal those changes. I haven't had a chance to review what was dropped on the dais today as far as what it is, but before I get into some of the information that I had, some of the questions I had, I guess if you would like to enlighten us, I would love that, because this is a very confusing topic. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure that we're taking appropriate action given the timeline, given the 90-day appeals period, to see whether we should be appealing, how we should be appealing, and what this means for us.
Certainly.
Kendall.
If I may, through, again, Travis Kendall, Planning and Zoning, through the mayor. Let me just speak to you a little bit about that. And obviously, as you said, it's a very, very complicated issue, and we're in the process of updating, well, let's rephrase. The county's in the process of updating their maps, having to do through FEMA and the firm, or and then there's the CRS that's on the side of it. Just for your all information, I provided you a package that includes an email from myself to respond to the initial maps which were sent to us. And the timeline on that, I'm just going to go through sort of where we are in the process and what we did from the beginning of receiving the maps until now. And then we'll kind of go into, if there's specific questions about the additional properties that were added, the maps that are here that are available for everybody to see, how they may impact the community, and what's being done to respond to the issue of the appeals process, which is also something that's going to be affecting us in the future. So obviously the original maps were sent to us on February 25th. In that, there was actually, you are correct, there was a statement which basically said you have 90 days to appeal, at which point I did a cursory review and found there to be significant issues which I felt affected us negatively. I then reached out to the people who were involved through that and found out that no, in fact, that isn't really true. The 90 days, that the tolling of the 90 days didn't begin or won't even begin until a future date, even from today. And that was based upon the next, basically I reached back out to them and they said, listen, on April 27th, there's going to be a meeting. It's a COO meeting to discuss the maps. And I included the PowerPoint from FEMA in that package, which I gave to you. It has all of the slides. And then specifically, that was on April 27th. And in that, which was just a few days ago, they basically went through it and said, oh, by the way, as part of that, the appeals process won't even begin for a few days. And if you look on page 31 of the PowerPoint, specifically, I have a tab there. It deals with the slide that says, where are we in the process? And on page 31, where are we in the process? And how then do you appeal the determinations by FEMA and the information which has been provided? And then obviously we're sort of in that process of looking at the data. So just as a quick note for everybody to know, which is very important, FEMA has provided us with a technical set of data files which include all of the layers for the maps and their simulations and their models for what could occur during a storm event or an upland event or a downland event or a hurricane event. So we have, in order to appeal their data, it has to be analyzed, reviewed, and actually certified by an engineer that there's a flaw or an error in the data which was provided to us, or the data sets which were provided to us. It's not an opinionated appeal. It is specifically data-driven. As a result of that, I know that through the manager, we've reached out to the county. We have a scheduled meeting, a WebEx meeting on the 6th. We're trying to get with the county because they have staffs of individuals and engineers that are reviewing the county data specifically for the purpose of the appeal. We're hoping to partner with them in the review of the data which has been provided to us, and hopefully they'll be able to provide some of the technical review which is required for the appeals process. So we're in the process of doing it. We've identified it as best we can. We're also looking to potentially appeal the portion of it which we identify as potentially incorrect. I mean, in theory, once the review is done, a technical review is done, it may be found that all the data supplied to us is in fact factually correct. And as a result of that, the maps which they've provided are 100% accurate. And as a result, then they would be sort of immune to an appeal and therefore would simply get approved. I will say that the initial response, which I've seen from the county to FEMA in regards to the data sets or the data files, which are very technical, they did find some significant issues and flaws in different places. So there is the potential, but I can't say guaranteed until the information is reviewed, that we have the same ability to appeal as the county would. So we're hoping to basically in the future, very near future, because we have that 90-day window that's tolling, to have that review done and potentially get at least the data looked at. So sort of as a quick summary, if you look for information just so everybody can hear it, the map which you see there on the left-hand side is the updated impacted properties within Miami Shores Village. And as you can see, they've identified approximately a 1% annual decrease in 92 properties within Miami Shores Village. There's no change in 568, which are currently in a flood zone. Within what they've identified as a flood area. There's a 2% annual increase in 191 properties. The green properties which are identified on the map do not require additional flood insurance. They simply have said, if there's a 2% 100-year storm, they do have some potential for flooding in theory. And then you've got the 1% annual increase, which are the affected properties in purple. Those are the ones that FEMA has currently identified through their data sets, the preliminary data sets, which would be required to obtain flood insurance moving forward in the future. And then you've got, there's actually 85 properties within the village that have been identified that would be a slight decrease on the new maps. And again, in the package, towards the back, you'll see there's two, if we want to get into the CRS and flood insurance, Florida is actually fortunate to have one of the lowest rates in the entire United States. The average flood insurance policy in the state of Florida, and I had two sources that are there in the back, average approximately $575 per household. So that is a number, while it's significant in the cost, it's certainly significantly lower based upon the number of participants than a majority of other states. So, and again, I don't know how much you want to get into the CRS. I could certainly answer. I have lots of information available for that and lots of time. So if you guys want it, I'm happy to do it. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, anyone?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
A couple of things. I want to talk just briefly about insurance premiums, because it's a little bit concerning, but I want to make sure I'm speaking correctly. Is it true that based on municipal point scoring that our insurance premiums could receive a discount?
They do currently receive a discount.
We currently receive a discount.
Because of our participation in the CRS.
And then will this, and this is complicated, will this affect those discounts? Is there an ability for this process on this flood mitigation to affect our discounts? Because I'm not clear.
Right.
I'm going to let you explain it.
Okay, so let's get into that for everybody who doesn't understand it. There are actually two totally separate processes. So you have the community rating system, which is basically a standalone reduction participation by the community, and you have the FEMA maps, which basically establish the flood zones. So this is sort of their regulations and apply to the houses. Then you've got the CRS. There are approximately 22,000 communities in the United States that participate in the NFIP program. Of those, only 5% actually participate in the CRS, which is the community rating system, which equates to approximately 1,200 communities. And just in understanding the CRS system, the CRS is ranked from a 10 to a 1. If your community is able to achieve a 1, you, in theory, would get a 45% discount. The very last page on that shows the discount rate page in your packages, and obviously the ranking of a 1 gets you a 45% discount on your flood insurance. Now, let's back up to how challenging is it to get to a 1. So, of the 1,200 communities that participate in the CRS, there's only 70 that actually have a ranking of 5 or less. So it goes from 10 to 1. So out of 1,200, approximately 70 have a ranking of 5 or less. And then there's only, I believe, 5 to 7 communities that actually have a ranking of 1.
What's our ranking?
8. So again, and understand the CRS, there's an annual review as participation. We have to provide information to FEMA on an annual basis in order to have the annual review. To continue to participate. Now, in addition to that, there's a forensic review that happens every 5 years. And they actually come to the community. They look at all of your data sets. And when I say data sets, they're looking at each different category within the community rating system to see whether because it changes each year, they change some of the rules, and some things you get points for and some things you don't. So I think it's June. Let me go 1 second here. June 22nd of this year, which is fast approaching, approximately 60 days, we have our 5-year review. So, the question is, how can we get better? And the answer to that is, when this 5-year review occurs, we're going to be looking, the village is going to be looking at what do we currently get points for, and what can we get points for, and how difficult is it going to be to get to points? Because everything that you do requires additional either regulations or there's lots of different ways, so within each one of the categories. But we're going to be looking at that very soon. So again, happy to report back on that and let you know all the things that may or may not be done in order to reduce the next category. But obviously, staff's going to be looking at ways to improve the point score in order to reduce the annual cost.
Yeah, my concern was with reducing the point score to reduce the annual cost.
But again, in looking at it, and I just might add, the question is because we have 610 households that are currently affected by this. So if you're looking just as monetarily, if you break down the average cost of a flood insurance policy, which is $575, every household as a result of the CRS participation is saving currently $57 per household. So if we were to go down a point and gain an additional 15%, obviously that number would increase by 5%. But again, it's nominal in the sense of what is the overall impact. And the other thing that we need to consider is what are the regulations going to impose on the residential households to obtain that next level. In other words, the regulations become exponentially harder as you increase. But again, we're going to be looking at that, and that's a balance that's going to be made. And you all will make a determination as to, we could get to a 1. Just what do we have to do to get to the 1? It's possible. But again, it would require significant changes to the Code of Ordinances and, again, more regulations.
I would like to know. It might be difficult to get to a 1. I'm not going to stress you out like that. But what about, shouldn't we be looking at something that would get us closer to a 1? Even a 5. Something that benefits the residents and that the residents are aware of. And I know it's difficult, but we should at least know what that takes to get there.
Well, the advantage of
even if it's not, even if it may or may not be feasible, but.
Yeah. Again, the advantage of the 5-year review is very soon, it's going to be reviewed in every category and every point as far as what we can get and what we currently have, because that's part of the analysis. So, I could certainly provide to you at the end of that review, here's where we are, and here's what we're missing, and here's what we need to do to get there. So that's going to be very, very clear in a very short period of time.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Sorry.
Please.
You said you went first. Go ahead.
Sure, okay. So Miami Beach is at a CRS rating of 5, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm just more curious as to how Miami Beach is at a 5. We're at an 8. What have they done to get to a 5? I'd love to, I don't know if you've had any communication with Miami Beach and the people there that are responsible for the CRS rating, but it might be a great opportunity to do some outreach to them to figure out what they've done to get there. Because that's, obviously, it's, as you mentioned, there's very few that have gotten even to 5 or under, but Miami Beach is one of them. There's obviously a benefit to everybody to having a reduction from where we're at, was it 10% right now, to potentially 25%. And is the $575, that's the average, is that right? Does that factor in the people that are in Zone X and paying 0?
No, that's actually only those that are paying for homeowners. Yeah.
Okay.
A policy.
Okay. So I think I don't know that I necessarily have a motion for us today, just to put it out there. I just wanted to make sure that we're time sensitive to the appeals deadline. It sounds like we're not with the 90 days, that we have more time, which is the critical issue and why I put it on the agenda this time. But I think what I would personally really benefit from is some more information about the CRS rating system, what Miami Beach is doing, given that they're our closest neighbor, I'd say with that 5 rating, probably the best rating of all the municipalities around us. And then with respect to these firms, and I know that they're very difficult to challenge, typically absent manifest error on the elevations that they have. It's pretty difficult to challenge it unless you've made some actual changes to your actual elevations themselves. But I guess there's reference in the NFIP to grandfathering. I think the community would love to know whether if you were in a zone AE and now you've been moved to a zone VE because of the change in the map, it sounds like there's a grandfathering that is part of the program and what that means. I'd like to understand how that works so that we can make a decision on whether we need to try to take further action. And then there's also reference to a risk rating 2.0, which was to go into effect October 1st, 2021. And so I'd love some more information about how risk rating 2.0 works. It looks like the premiums for properties that are in special flood hazard areas are no longer going to be necessarily tied to their flood zone designation, but more about their actual risk of flooding. So I don't know if there's anything that you could maybe find out about risk rating 2.0 and how that's supposed to work, and whether that's still to be implemented on October 1st, 2021. Because it looks like, I think, from my understanding, all properties that are in the VE zone are designated kind of the same risk if you're in a VE, and they're all paying the same premium ultimately on that risk based on an actuarial basis. And this risk rating 2.0 will have properties that are in the same VE zone, maybe side by side, may not actually be paying the same premiums anymore, and there's going to be some kind of process behind it. But I think it'd be useful for our residents to understand how that works. Thank you.
If I may, through the mayor, sorry, just as a quick response, just as a note, we only had 2-3 properties before that were in the VE zone. The new maps which are coming out actually take all of the properties out of the VE zone and put them into the AE zone. The VE zones are shifted offshore, so we will actually no longer have VE zone properties within Miami Shores. So it's a benefit of those. They have slightly higher development regulations, but again, that's just what's currently being proposed. So in that sense, it's better for the community, theoretically, as far as impact for construction development requirements. So, but I certainly will look into that and get back to you at the next meeting with that, sure.
Okay. Mayor Harris, I just have a brief comment. Back on October 6, 2020, and I'm kind of directing this to you, Vice Mayor, because it sounds like you've done a lot of homework on this. And October 6, 2020, it was an agenda item, and the clerk can provide you with a background of that, because that talks about the local management strategy, or LMS. It's, 100 and something pages, but it goes through each community and what they are doing, but more importantly, what they plan to do. And attached to our memo at that time was what we plan to do to various infrastructure improvements that will help us to move ahead. And I know that's going to be some of what we're going to need to do to get to the next discount category. So I think maybe if the clerk provides you with that, you'd be interested.
that'd be wonderful. I'd
It's
love to see
always
that.
great to have more than one person, developing research and helping us out.
Any further discussions or questions? Seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Item 10H, discussion and possible action regarding allegations of conflict of interest regarding Miami Shore's Chief of Police and Advantage Law Enforcement Compliance, Inc. and Advantage Networking, Inc., sponsored by Councilmember Crystal Wager, co-sponsored by Mayor Sandra Harris.
Madam Mayor? Yes. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of sort of vet this out with my colleagues sitting up here, and I'm grateful that Attorney Leonard Carson sent us this memo. I read through it a couple of times, and let's assume that Attorney Carson's memo is correct and there's no illegality to the chief having outside employment. It's unclear because he cites no case law in the matter, but let's assume that's correct. It's not really the last word on this. And assuming that this is not problematic, and I am assuming that it's not problematic, what I will say is this. I would submit that just because one can do something, it doesn't mean you should do it, right? What we have here, from what I understand, and I'm going to reference this memo in a second, we have two companies with the same CEO. One has an existing contract with both and correct me when I'm wrong, but my understanding is the police department and the village as a whole. Prior to the chief becoming chief, as an officer, he went into business with the entity who provides the village services. He went into business with an entity that provides village services. Once he then became the chief, my first question to you, Mr. Attorney, is, or Mr. Manager, who has the procurement authority in the police department?
We have a procurement process where we go through, the chief would recommend, usually his senior staff would recommend to him, he would do a purchase order, the purchase order would go through the finance department and ultimately would come to me.
So the chief makes a recommendation on the procurement based on what his committee internally asked him to make the recommendation on, then it comes to finance, and then it comes to you. All right.
And it depends on what it is.
Well, what do you mean it depends on what it is?
Vehicles may be one group of people. If it was supplies for the K-9 Corps, then that might be another group of people that handle the dog.
Who makes the procurement decisions on IT? Is it the manager or is it the chief? If it's for the police department, who makes the procurement decisions for IT?
I guess that would be in conjunction with Lisa Keeley. Chief, would you come up here, please?
Oh, is he here? Great.
Yep. Lisa Keeley, our IT manager, okay, who works in my office. Okay, so she's the one that is the point person that works with Advantage Network. Okay, now, each individual department director, when they have a problem in their department, they can call Lisa and say, hey, look, this isn't working or that's not working, and Advantage then sends out a technician to work on it.
When we initially procured Advantage, who made the decision for that procurement? Was it, now this is before the chief was the chief now, as he was an officer. How did that procurement process work?
RFQ.
An RFQ?
Yes.
And so the manager, how does that RFQ process?
I made a recommendation and the council.
And the council voted on it, okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Carson also makes a point to highlight that the initial contract that the chief entered into with the village, he references this employment agreement that's not attached to his memo, so I can't reference that agreement. But So I don't know if this is disclosed, this outside employment or this outside opportunity in the chief's contract. Is that opportunity, or does it have to be disclosed in the chief's contract?
I don't believe it has to.
It does not have to be. Okay. And once the chief became the police chief, and we were working with this company, the memo was actually silent. Hold on, excuse me.
I think we need to back up because you've got something wrong here in the timeline.
I'm following this memo, but I'll listen.
Okay, Advantage was, and maybe Mr. Carson has the wrong date, I don't know, but Advantage was hired. Advantage has been our computer service long before the chief was the chief.
I'm aware.
Okay.
I mentioned that.
Okay.
When he was an officer, you'd already hired him, and then he became the chief, and then he took a position.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So if I guess you're implying that it did not have to be indicated in the chief's contract with regard to outside employment because there are mechanisms in place for him to, start a company or do whatever he needed to do outside. So that's not going to be indicated in his contract. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Okay. This memo is also silent on whether or not once the chief became the chief, did he or did the village expand the contract, or did the contract become re-upped over the years? Because the village seems to have re-upped the contract with this particular company in recent years. Is that correct? When was the last year that this contract was re-upped within the village?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but it was before the chief attempted to start this company.
Okay. So this memo with nothing attached to it, no site case law, nothing for me to reference to confirm or go through the points that the attorney is making is one thing. But I have to tell you, there are a bunch of unknowable facts here, and it's not about the chief, right? It's not even really about the chief. What this is really about is transparency and accountability. Now, it's my understanding that his employment with this other company was disclosed to a council at some point. I was not aware of it in the 2 years that I've been here. But again, it's less about the chief and it's more about transparency and what we as elected officials and what our residents are looking for here. And I will also say one more other thing on this memo. He says the chief has an official position with the second company. He says that's essentially dormant. I don't know what essentially means. That's pretty vague as well. Chief, would you like to tell me what essentially dormant means? Be happy to speak. Please.
Madam Mayor, elected officials.
Thank you, sir.
So let me address a couple things that you mentioned and add some clarity to some things and some gaps. So in summary, you have Leonard Carson's memo in front of you that he opines that I'm able to do both. Mm-hmm. Also, my contract, which you don't have, but you're welcome to a copy of it, does not specifically restrict me to sole employment for the village. According to village rules, I'm allowed to take secondary employment as long as I seek permission and it doesn't interfere with my jobs.
And the village rules are indicated where?
Village Rule Handbook.
Thank you.
So let me talk a little bit about Advantage Networking. Advantage Networking. Advantage Networking has been a contractor for the city for over 12 years. The RFP you reference was in 2016, RFP 2016-01 was the RFP where they awarded services. That's the latest RFP that they were awarded services for the village. That contract was subsequently renewed in 2020. I had no part in that. That was done by the city manager and the IT manager.
May I interrupt you for a moment?
Yes.
That contract was renewed in 2020?
2020. The 2016 RFP had a renewal clause in it that the city could renew the contract.
Okay, and may I interrupt you for one moment? Mr. Manager, when that contract was renewed in 2020, I assume it was the same process you just referenced. You made a recommendation to the council.
No, it had a rollover clause in the contract.
So no recommendation was made to the council because there was a rollover clause.
That's correct.
And it
When we
didn't have to
brought
come before the
When we
council.
brought it to the council originally, all this was disclosed. We told the council, we showed them all the documents, and the council was privy to all of that, and the council approved that at the time. So when the contract was expired, when the original contract was up, they do a great job for us, and it rolled over.
And at the time the contract rolled over, was it, and it was brought to the council, was it indicated to the council that? Okay, all right, so just automatically happened.
It's in the original
That
contract.
goes back to my transparency argument, but go ahead, Chief.
So where I see confusion still existing is Advantage Networking, which provides day-to-day support operations, maintenance, software installation, help desk issues to the city, and ALEC, which is a totally separate company with a totally separate mission. So
Even
let's
though
talk.
they have the same address?
They have the same address
CEO?
because the CEO is the same.
Okay.
And I'm going to get to that.
I'm going to let you finish.
So Alec's job is to go and help agencies with CJIS audits. Every 3 years, agencies that collect CJIS information, basically law enforcement, state attorney's offices, and things like that, are required to get audited to make sure they're following best practices as it relates to computer infrastructure security.
Yes.
That's what they do.
Yep.
That's what ALEC was formed to do. When ALEC was formed in 2018, before that company even started, I went and approached the village manager and said, Mr. Benton, this is what I intend on doing. Is there an issue with this? Do you have any concerns over this? This is what I'm going to do for a little bit on the side just because I like computers. I've been doing computers for years. Village manager said, look, I don't really have a concern with it, but I want you to run this by the labor attorney. I called the labor attorney. I said, Leonard Carson, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What say you? Here's the particulars of it. He said, I don't see any conflict of interest. It's not something you do. In my shop, as it relates to CJIS audits, that's done by my command staff, by Lieutenant McLeod. I don't do that anymore. I did that when I was lieutenant and captain. So, Alec's formation. Why? I'm too young to retire. I like working and I like computers. At the time in 2018, I was not permitted to work here anymore. The end of my year, I would have to leave. That was the rule in place. Council meeting 11/16/2018, the ordinance was changed because of an IRS issue that they were trying to resolve that basically said, we already had people that were staying and had stayed. They changed the ordinance, first reading at that council meeting. The second council meeting was February 19th, 2019. That council meeting, they approved it on second reading. At that point, my boss approached me, Mr. Benton, and said, hey, the rules, because we had to fix the IRS issue, you can stay. Would you be willing to stay? I said I would consider it. Let me think about it overnight. Let me discuss it with my family. Fast forward, here I still am. Under Miami-Dade County rules, outside employment is required to be reported, and revenue. Once I accepted to stay on, we decided not to do anything more with ALEC at that point. My 2018 outside employment form reports 0 income or compensation. My 2019 form reports 0 income, zero compensation. Tomorrow, I have it with me. I'd be happy to give it to the village clerk. I have my 2020 outside employment form, which is not due till July 1st, reports 0 income. We basically shelved the company so that we wouldn't do anything. As it relates to that, my final comments will be this. I have worked here for 32 years. I have given my life to this city, figuratively and almost literally on multiple occasions. I love this city and I work every day for this city to make it the best that it is. The year before I became chief, the number of robberies in the city were 33. Last year, 10, lowest on record. Before that, 2005, before I became the chief, residential burglaries, the breaking into the house, 272 in that year. Last year, 40, lowest on record. I have been transparent with my boss. Maybe that didn't reach the council. For that, I apologize. I've not tried to do anything unethical, illegal, or anything else. I sought legal guidance from the city council before I did it, and the company is basically dormant at this point. If council feels, hey, look, we still see an issue with this, I'm sure the president of both companies would understand and he'd be happy to let me off the contract because we've already had that conversation.
Okay, and no one is questioning your service to this community. I know you've been here 32 years, and I know the rates because I've asked you for that over and over again. My concern here, I've been elected by the residents to make sure that there is transparency with this village, and I'm trying to do my job, and transparency is important. So what I see here is an issue about transparency and accountability because it doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right, right? This is not a private corporation. This is a municipality. And transparency in a small municipality like this should be paramount. It is not about your service. This is about how a municipality of this size should be run in order to accommodate and answer to its residents, right? The avoidance of any impropriety, the avoidance of the appearance of impropriety should be paramount. That should be the number one goal of what we're doing here. We have a fiduciary duty to our community. And when we have questions which are coming from our residents to us, I have to ask them. And I shouldn't be worried about asking them. And it's not a personal attack. I'm asking questions because it does not look right. It does not smell right. And I wasn't privy to any of that background information. And my colleagues may have a different opinion, but I'm saying this just when our tax dollars are paying for salaries and the residents want to ask questions, I'm going to ask them because that's what I was elected to do. And sadly, I don't think in the past the bar was set that high for ourselves. That's my opinion. And those who were elected to sit on that dais at that point, that's on them. But I will always ask questions on behalf of the residents because that's what they elected us to do. And I think that we should set the bar much higher in terms of our transparency and the way we do business here in the village so that when there are questions, when this first came up, we should have gotten a reply. We should have been like, okay, this is it. Well, here's the reason behind this, or here's the background behind it. Instead, it was radio silence. So I'm asking the questions, and I appreciate that you are here to answer them. But don't you think for 1 second it is about your service to this community. I understand your service to this community. I'm supportive of your service to this community. You are not under attack, okay? I'm looking for transparency in this municipality. So I appreciate that you're here. I appreciate that you answered the questions, and I thank you. But nobody was privy to any of this information, and it does not look good. It smells bad. So I have a duty to ask the questions. And so thank you. With that, if my colleagues may have some other questions, I'll come back to some more later.
Madam Mayor, may I? My question is really just for clarity on my point. We're new. Dollar amount, what's the dollar amount for any contract or any negotiation or any agreement that the village goes into before the council gets involved?
$25,000.
That's by a state.
Unless there is a state or county contract where the item has been bid already. For example, a garbage truck. So the county will do bids, large bids on things like that. We can piggyback off those contracts. Police cars. The Florida Sheriff's Association buys police cars. So we can piggyback by our ordinance on somebody else's contract that has already done the due diligence and has gone and competitively bid it.
Okay. And for clarification, procurement is done by whom again? our procurement process?
We have a process where each individual department, let's just say that somebody wants to buy, like Public Works, they need to buy a compactor, okay? So there's different thresholds. When you reach, I believe it's $5,000, you have to have 3 written quotes, or maybe 3 telephone quotes. So we have a form, you write down whatever the 3 vendors you contact, and you have to contact 3 vendors. Then there's another threshold where you need to have a written quote. When you reach that, then you have to go out to bid and you have to publish specifications. When you exceed $25,000, and you have to go out and you have to do sealed bid specifications and advertise. You go out to bid, you receive the bids back, and then the council awards the bids.
Accordingly,
at the end of the day.
you go out to bid, meaning who does that? Who makes that decision, or is it different for each department?
Who makes which decision?
Who makes a decision on which 3 we choose? Who makes a decision on
Well,
who to
the-
call
The
for?
department director.
The department
Again,
directors. Thank you.
Whatever profession there is. I mean, there's certain things like, if you need an air compressor, Ingersoll Rand is one of the best in the business, and your Public Works people are going to know that. They'll go out, they'll shop around, and they'll do their research, and they'll find out which ones are the best manufacturer. They'll publish a set of specs and put it out for public bidding, and people bid on it.
Okay. This is for clarification so that we have new members so that we know, what the process is. The second question that I have is rollover contracts. You mentioned that. In the rollover contracts, do we know how many contracts that we have that are pending rollover? And is there a way for us to have a list of those 6 months out?
Sure, I can find out for you. I don't think there's, I don't know. I don't want to venture a guess. I'll have to do the research and get back to you.
Councilmember, there's
Sure.
a resolution, and we'll get you a copy,
Okay.
that lays out the procurement limits that he just described. It's all in writing.
Okay. And the rollover contracts, can we get just a time span on when we can get that?
Sure, I can have it for you. I'll go to the office tomorrow morning. We'll get it for you right away.
All right, thank you. Chief, like I said, I want to say thank you for your service and thank you for coming to answer these questions.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Through the mayor? Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
you've said to me more than once, if you don't have your integrity, you don't have anything. And I want you to know that I know you have that integrity. I listened when I was told by the manager what had gone on. It was before it even went on that I listened to him tell me that. I understood what you were trying to do. I don't know why my fellow council member that was present at the time did not hear that same thing, but I did. I understood it. I support you in every way, 1,000%. And I want to thank you for coming here tonight to answer these questions that arose from a convicted felon. Thank you.
Again,
Madam Mayor?
I appreciate that, but to Mayor, or former Mayor Wagner's point, I have no issue with it. She has the right to ask me questions, and she should have answers.
Madam Mayor?
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. This is our first meeting together with me up here and actually with any kind of business to be done. And I think people are going to find that I'm very brutally blunt and honest. And that's the way I'm going to be. I'm not a career politician. I don't pretend to be. And, I've found that actually discussing things in conflict is a very natural thing and a needed thing. I think a lot of this issue may have been solved had there been better communication from either village management or people responding to questions, whether it be by email, through Facebook or social media, wherever it comes up. I think that communication would have really helped a lot and given people a lot of answers versus leaving things unknown. The memo from the attorney, labor attorney, Mr. Carson, I thought was pretty poor memo as far as attorneys go. And I'll say that because when I'm looking to my attorneys for legal advice, or when I myself am giving legal advice and I'm in that position, I don't skew or provide bias in what I'm saying. And I found that his memo was very defensive instead of just laying out the facts. And the facts itself probably would have been enough, but extremely defensive. You know, I don't know that I know an attorney that's supposed to be giving an opinion that says something's essentially dormant. I would never say that about a company unless I've actually investigated it and know that, or have some kind of evidence of that. You know, the Alex site, you know, it's got a copyright of 2021 on it, so someone's obviously maintaining the copyright on it. It's got under careers, they're hiring a network consultant that's up and running. So, you know, I don't know if it's dormant or not. I don't have the facts. And so I'm not sure how our attorney Carson could so quickly come to say something like that. I don't know. It's a memo that I thought was poorly done. Now, one of the questions I have is, and this has arisen as many people may have seen on social media, but obviously Mr. Naranjo has also been recently commented on as having outside employment. He has an LLC or a corporation, Sims, which is doing construction with his wife, who's also an officer. And so the question I have really is, what is our policy on outside employment of village staff? Are we, as a course of conduct, allowing that to occur? Have we forbidden anybody that's asked for the same thing from doing that when they've asked? And I think this is all really important to look at in the light of whether something is passive or not. A lot of people have passive investments. A lot of people are presidents of limited liability companies that do nothing, and they're all set up. And so there's a lot of corporations and businesses that are out there. A lot of people use LLCs to invest in real estate, to invest in other things, and it's passive in nature. I don't know whether a COO position at ALEC is passive or not. I wouldn't have the facts. I wouldn't know. But the broader issue that I'm interested in understanding is, how are we treating outside employment? How are we verifying whether there is active outside employment or whether it's passive, and how many people have that currently, and has anybody asked for and been denied that?
Madam Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir.
First of all, employees don't need to seek permission in order to work outside. Our personnel rules and regulations state that the only thing they need to do is complete the outside employment statement and file it with a village clerk that's required by the county. And of course, any money that they make has got to be reported on their Form 1. As far as our building official is concerned, when we hired him, he disclosed that he had a company that is dormant. It's hard to keep a license up, so in order to be a building official, you've got to be licensed by the state of Florida. Okay, and in order to do that, you've had to be in the construction business, or you've had to be an architect or an engineer. Miami-Dade County has made it, unfortunately, a lot more difficult over the years to be a building official and to hold a license. When Ishmael was hired with us, he had that license, he had a company, and he did close it down. He still has it, he doesn't do it, he doesn't work there, but it's an active license, but he does no business there. It's, as you said, it's passive, it's open, it's there.
If I may interrupt, though, I have seen that there's work, I think, that's been done for City of Sunrise and maybe City of Sunny Isles under Sims.
He works in other places and again, understand, there's building officials that work for us right now. We have a situation where we got behind due to COVID on one of our guys got sick. We have a building official from another community that comes here and works for us that's catching us up. We had a call from, Ishmael had a call from another city that said, hey, can you come on your weekends or at night or whenever? I can tell you it does not interfere with us at all. Ishmael is the first to get here and the last to leave every day. He walks out of here Friday night with an armload of plans and takes it home with him. He is always here. He is always on the job, and that has absolutely no bearing on the way he runs his department at all.
Yeah, so not so much a question about him. Again, I'm not really as focused on the individuals, as more kind of what our policies are. And so you've noted that there's no restriction on outside employment.
As long as
they file their disclosure with the village clerk.
It doesn't interfere. Those employees with secondary jobs or who do odd jobs must understand that their village job is their first responsibility. Okay, and if someone has an outside job and it interferes, then management steps in and says, look, you got to do something else, this isn't working out.
How many employees currently have outside employment or have filed that, I would say, with the clerk?
It goes through the clerk, I don't know.
I would say about 7. I mean, I can get you a number right now. I can look at what I have in the repository.
I'd like to see that
Okay.
when you have the chance. I'd just like to understand that. And
Madam Clerk, can you please provide all of that to all of us, please?
So noted.
Thank you.
And you know, I guess the question is, have you as a village manager ever told anybody that your outside employment's interfering with your job duties? Have you seen that arise?
When I was at Public Works many years ago, I had a guy that was trimming trees on the side, and I had to tell him to knock it off because he would come dragging in on in the morning, and I could tell that, he'd been trimming trees till God knows when, but in recent times,
Nothing
no,
recent.
it's not been an issue.
Okay, great, thank you. So, I think as Councilperson Wager said, this is really an issue of transparency. I know that there's, as I said, I'll be blunt, I know that there's plenty of, I think, things circulating out there as to people's motivations, whatever else. I can tell you my motivation is purely about just transparency and issues raised, the questions raised. If it had been answered outside of this forum, that would have been great. It wasn't, so I guess now we're asking the questions here. So I took a look, and if something's truly dormant, I think the easy thing would have been probably to just remove yourself as COO back in that time and kind of disassociate yourself from the company until you're ready to make it non-dormant. It's just something I would think to do, obviously for appearance's sake. It would have probably avoided a lot of this, and then rejoin later. So when I reviewed the documents, and I did ask for a production of all of the RFPs and the selection committee notes as far as these are concerned, my recollection is the RFP is actually not even from 2016. It was started in 2015. So it's 2015, and I think the timeline is critical to understand. So 2015 is when there was an RFP issued for the IT services. There were 3 bidders in that RFP process. It was Advanced Networks, UDT, and another one whose name I didn't actually write down here. So there were 3 bidders. I believe Advanced Networks came in as the lowest bid. One of them, I didn't see an actual amount on their bid and their proposal, but Advanced Networks and UDT were approximately the same. Advanced was at $7,700 a month in 2016, and UDT was at $8,000 a month in 2016, plus some onboarding costs that would have made it slightly more expensive. So that was in 2015. In December of 2015, there was a selection committee. The selection committee was comprised of 3 people. Chief Lysted was one of them. Holly, was it from finance, was the second one, and the third one was Liz Keeley, I believe, who's the IT person. So there were 3 people on a selection committee, and Chief Lysted was one of them at that time. The contract was awarded to Advanced Networking, as everybody understands, in 2016, with some renewal periods built in. In 2018 is when ALEC was incorporated. So that was sometime later. I don't know, and I don't have the facts about whether Chief Lysted had any relationship at the time he was on a selection committee in 2015 with Stephen Finizio of Advanced Networking. I don't. And that's information I don't have. But I think it's important to lay out the timeline so that everybody understands kind of what the timeline was here and the progression of everything. I don't have all the details. Obviously, it does present some appearances that everybody should understandably be concerned about and ask the questions, and that's okay to ask the questions. That's what we're here for. But ultimately, we also need to take a look at the facts. I'm much more concerned about what's our policy, what are we doing about it, is it interfering with our work, Chief Lystad saying he's getting $0, from the business. I don't know. We haven't gone and asked for things that you would do in litigation discovery to see what is the revenues and trying to find that out. And I don't know that we necessarily need to do that on this type of basis for all employees. I think it's important that we ask the questions. And I think it's important that Chief Lystad showed up and actually came to answer the questions. He was not required to do so, but I think that's admirable that he at least showed up. I don't have a full picture on this. I don't say that I have the actual details on it, but I don't have enough information to say that there was a conflict of interest per se. We've gotten a memo from the attorney, which again was poorly written, but suggesting that this was disclosed at the time. I look at this all, and I think it's important that we have this discussion. It's important we have this discussion as a community. It's important we understand that our community is really concerned about how things look. And so if you're a village employee, it's really important for us to understand how things look. And these are the natural types of questions that we're going to ask. And I think that we should ask. It's our duty to ask. It's important and incumbent upon us as the elected officials, whether we like it or not, to ask these questions, which may not be comfortable questions to ask, but that's where we are. So let me see if I had anything else I wanted to add here before I... Madam Mayor, I think that's all I have for now.
Okay, now can I speak? Chief, thanks for coming here this evening. And I really believe that you didn't have any bad motives when you joined this company. However, I've approved a lot of outside employment in my years of a senior manager in the county and the city, and I would not have approved this. This, not only the appearance of it, it's just not proper. I looked at the Miami-Dade County Commission Guide on Ethics and Public Trust, and under municipal examples of conflict of interest is outside employment with a government vendor that currently transacts business with the department. Now, all government employees have side jobs, so that doesn't bother me. I've approved a lot of them, and a lot of people have them, but I would not have approved this particular job, and I don't think it's our job here to... It's a very uncomfortable conversation I have with you because I respect your work and everything. It's very uncomfortable, but nevertheless, it's here. And it's not our job to try to get to the bottom of this and figure this out. So I would recommend or even motion that this goes to the state attorney for clarification, and at minimum, you no longer involve yourself with this company, because we need our residents to have confidence in that we're not hiding anything, and I definitely don't want to be part of any kind of cover-up, which I don't think you're covering up anything. Everything you said here tonight, I have your papers that you filed, your outside employment, your money. You did what you were to do. But this, I do not believe, passed the smell test and should have been approved because of the company. The CEO also does business with the department. That's just my 2 cents on it. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, was that a motion or?
Yes, that's a motion.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, can you restate what the motion's for?
To let the state attorney look at this. To direct, do you need to be a motion or direction to the attorney?
Well, no, when you phrased your comments, you mentioned that you would like to...
That's my outcome. If that needs to be a motion for the outcome for the state attorney to look at this, then I would make a motion. Yes.
Okay.
The only way you're going to get a state attorney to look at this is if somebody files a complaint. We can't, I mean, we could write a letter to the state attorney, but they get a lot of those letters.
Well, where do you think it should go? I mean, because it's not going to be settled out here, and we just need to settle this, put this to bed. Yes. Well, that was like both, yeah. Yes.
So you're not satisfied with that because you want both? You want an outside organization
I want a third-party person. It could be the Ethics Commission. That's who ruling I was looking at here. And I want to put it to bed because it's taken up too much mental energy of mine, the citizens, everyone. Now, this is not about your performance. No one has ever spoken about your performance in a negative way. You're an upstanding guy, I get that. But I do not believe that the village manager should have allowed this relationship to happen. So I'm looking more at your supervisor than you. I've managed people, and I would not have allowed this. And I have approved a lot of outside employments. But in this situation, I would not have. And the Ethics Commission has an example of why this just doesn't look right. Yes. She said the combination of having an ethics commission look at this and him stepping down from the company, is that what I'm asking? And if the ethics commission is the best we have, well, yes, that's what I'm asking.
We don't have any of it. Anyone can file a complaint with the Ethics Commission if you think. I don't believe there's a basis for a complaint to the Ethics Commission. If you'd like, I'll draft one up for any of you to sign and send in, if that's what you like.
Well, if that's the way that you receive a directive to do so, then that would be fine.
Madam Mayor, may I make a
Yes,
suggestion?
thank you.
Perhaps the best route to go if we're going to look at the Ethics Commission is to reach out to the Ethics Commission with the facts as we know them and have them offer an opinion. You don't have to. You do not have to make a complaint to the Ethics Commission.
We could request an opinion,
but you can ask for an opinion.
Tomato, tomato. I'm with it.
Would that be
Yes,
satisfactory?
yes.
All right.
And I hope this does not come at, like, we have no confidence in you. That's not the intent. We just really, this cloud of somebody's hiding something, we need to just move forward with it and just move on. Yes. And thank you for your service, and thank you for showing up.
Is there a second, Madam Mayor?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I think Councilperson Birch wanted to add something.
Oh, we had
No, I did. I have a question for the chief. Chief, are you willing to make this closure of this? Are you willing to close the company?
I don't have the authority to close it because it's not my company, but I can step down from it.
Right.
I have no issue with that.
Right,
Okay.
that's all I'm asking.
Well, now I need clarity. If he steps down from that, do you still want an opinion from the Ethics Commission?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Madam Mayor, there's a motion on the floor. I believe
Is
it
there
was
a second?
seconded by Councilmember Wagger.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm packing up.
We do have village council announcements. The next village council meeting will be held on May 18th at 6:30 PM at 9900 Northeast 2nd Avenue at 6:30 PM. And are you ready to splash, slide, and spray your way through this tropical theme aquatic playground? The Miami Shores Aquatic Park, Wild Waters, has opened on weekends for the month of May and will open all week, meaning Sunday to Sunday, starting June 14th. Also, the Miami Shores Village Historic Walking Tours has commenced. Bring your cameras, enjoy history and architecture, joining one or all three socially distant outdoors events walking the streets of Miami Shores Village to observe these properties. Please contact the Brockway Memorial Library for more information or to purchase tickets at mswalkingtour.eventbrite.com. Also, in honor of Memorial Day virtual ceremony, Miami Shores Village remembers and honors the brave men and women who gave their lives while serving in the country's armed forces. Join us on this day of remembrance to pay tribute. This virtual ceremony will be featured on our social media outlets. For more information, please contact the Recreation Department at 305-758-8103. And in observance of Memorial Day, the village will be closed on May 31st. Normal garbage routes will be followed. Next item is Village Council comments.
Councilman Birch.
Thank you. I did
I did have something to say to my colleagues because transparency has been mentioned so many times tonight. I believe transparency works through the agenda and the support documentation that a member of the council gives to their item. I know that it is hard work to put your thoughts together in writing and get it to the clerk in time for her to include it in the agenda. But what you do then, when you send that agenda out to someone, or when it becomes available on the website and someone curious looks at it, if they have nothing to click on as supporting documentation, is that being entirely fair to your resident who really is not familiar with the day-to-day? I could give some examples, but I'm not going to because I've been not very nice enough tonight. But I really would appreciate it in my colleagues. I like to study that agenda ahead of time, but my residents do also. And if you give them an item with just a title, they're thinking, what is this really about? So I would like to respectfully ask my colleagues to give some sort of a memo or attachment to, other than just a past document, I get that, that's helpful, but what they are thinking when they bring forward that item. I would really appreciate it. I thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I was out of line.
Noted. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Somebody.
It's me. I have several comments that I'd like to make. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming. This was our first meeting. We survived, barely. I took a tour of the village and the department heads with our with village manager, and I want to say that we have people work really, really hard in this village.
Yes.
That have spent years pouring into this village, making it and keeping it the village that we love. So I think that it's important and it's imperative that we understand that when residents have questions and when we have questions, it is not to question the competency or the loyalty or the heart that's been poured into the work that everybody's been doing. But it's also important that when residents have questions that, I hate to use the word transparency again because we've beat it to death, but if we could provide a scenario where there was a trust in the decisions that are made and people feel as though that they can get answers, I think we could stop a lot of the, I don't want to call them accusations, but I think that when these things arise, they should be addressed immediately. We want to create a scenario where we protect the people who work in this village, where they come to work happy and they're not feeling as though if someone has a question that they're being attacked, or that they shouldn't ask the questions, right? So I don't know if that's something that we solve today. I do know that moving forward, that's something that we need to think about as a council. I think that even as we sit in this dais, that we need to think about how we speak to each other, how we address each other, how we share our issues and concerns publicly is important, because the message that we send publicly is also a message that tells our village residents whether or not we have confidence in each other, and that's important because they voted for everyone who's up here. The other thing that I would like to talk about is I would like to, it wasn't mentioned today, but I'd like to publicly thank Mr. Tom Benton for his years of service here in Miami Shores. Mr. Benton called, I believe, everyone here, and he sent a letter of resignation. So 49 years is a long time. 49 years is a really, really long time. It's longer than I've been alive. And again, I have to reference this tour because it's important to reference this tour. This would not be the village that it is today if Tom Benton is the person that he is today. So I think we owe him a thank you for his service. his time, and like all things in life, you know, they always tell you that the trees, we can learn something from the trees, right? And that is seasons change. Miami Shores is entering into a new season, and Mr. Benton has been kind enough to give us a notice. And with the entering of that new season, Madam Mayor and council members, I would like for us to move in an expeditious manner to try to find an individual that can come in the interim so that Mr. Benton can share as much of his institutional knowledge with that individual as possible, and that we can get someone in here so that we can make sure that there is not a lapse in time where we don't have someone who has enough information and enough competency to get it done. So I am calling for an emergency meeting that will happen in 48 hours, because I believe that's the rule. So if we can agree to have an emergency meeting in 48 hours to discuss an interim city manager, village manager, I would really like you guys to consider that.
I would second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
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 So thank you guys, and again, Mr. Benton, thank you for your service, thank you for your time. I believe we all speak, I speak for everyone here, we will more than likely celebrate you in the future, but I wanted to say that publicly, and I want everybody listening, if you're watching, if you're out there, it is not easy to do these jobs, and I would like for this new season to also include some consideration, some grace, and some thoughtfulness when we're talking about the people who come in and day out to do the work of making this village work. And I would also like to extend that grace to everyone who sits on this council today and those who sat on this council before, because there'll be a day where they'll be judging us too.
Amen.
So thank you guys for coming. Good evening.
Madam Mayor? Thank you. I think I really should make a motion to never let Councilwoman St. Fleur go before me. Because every time she does that, she always steals my thunder. So I was going to talk about, on our closing comments, I was going to talk about, number one, the walking tour, which is already mentioned by our village clerk. I was going to get into a little bit about the FPL undergrounding that's happening, and that they're approaching a whole section trying to get easements signed up with people, and try to point people to that, encourage them to do that so we can get better storm hardening and resiliency. But I feel like tonight, again, in the bluntness, I think we just need to acknowledge as a community that we are going through a difficult time. We are going through a very difficult time in understanding how to talk to each other, understanding how to communicate what our thoughts are on issues in a way that is respectful and in a way that is understanding of the viewpoints of others in the community. We have a lot of issues that are issues that people have a lot of really important viewpoints on, a lot of good points on either side. Some people think certain things are no-brainers. A no-brainer means we're not thinking about how our neighbors are feeling about something. We're only thinking about ourselves. Everything requires that there be two sides to a story and two analyses or more done, and to think about what it is that we're actually trying to do and trying to accomplish. And how do we engage with each other? I think we are better than some of the discussion that's happened. I know we are better than this. We are better than this. We are better as council members in this. We are better than this as far as the discussions that are happening on social media, where we're trying to make points, but we think that our points are stronger when we start to belittle or aggressively attack people that within our community. If you're looking to belittle or attack people in the community, then maybe your point's not so strong. You should just focus on your point. And try to win the argument that way, not on trying to put others down. This is the first council meeting, and we've had to address some really tough issues, and we're going to address many more. I know that Mayor Harris and I have 4 years on this still. I just hope for all of us, given this is the first meeting, I hope for all of us that we can find a way to understand that we are neighbors, we are living together, we are going to live together. We have to take into account everybody else's thoughts and needs, and we need to be respectful of each other for everybody. Thank you.
I do want to thank Manager Tom Benton for his service. I've enjoyed learning and learned a lot, and I know that where your heart was with this village and where it is with this village, so we do appreciate it. I wanted to echo her comments, so thank you. Thank you very much for your service to this community. It's greatly appreciated, Tom. And I echo the sentiments of my colleagues, and I won't say much more. I've said a lot today. And so I'm going to leave it there, but certainly I hope everybody understands that we do have a fiduciary duty to our residents and an ability to ask questions and get answers so that we can be effective council members and leaders. Thanks.
I don't have much difference to say. I was going to announce Tom's retirement, and again, thank you for your service. He's not leaving immediately the way we're talking. He's going to be around and transition with us. And I also was going to ask for a special meeting, but Katia beat me to it. So with that, I hope that I wasn't disrespectful, because I'm hearing this, we disrespectful. I hope I wasn't. I tend to be matter of fact and to the point. I apologize. And if I offended anyone, it's not my intentions, but we're here to do the business of the city, and that's always my intentions. So with that, any other comments? Any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'm hungry.
Second?
Well, second.
Please adjourn. I say aye.
Aye.
Ma'am. So wait, you gotta tell me where you buy these dresses. You like it? I love dresses. I'm a dress girl.
Just a quick question before everybody come over here.